Well, it's kind of cold and it's overcast, but at least there's hardly any wind, and that's about as good as we're going to get this time of year. There was a bit of rain earlier, but hopefully it's all gone over. This is the Dromida Voyager, sort of a scale model of the Stinson Voyager, although technically if it was Stinson Voyager it really should have wing struts. Anyway, as many people have commented, this is a bit of a pain in the ass as a RC model. It is well known, as I think everybody has commented, for its prop shafts breaking. The original little prop shafts, they're incredibly thin and made of very poor quality metal, and they break at the slightest provocation, and everybody, I think who's had one has said that. The transmitter that comes with it is also pretty awful. Now, I flew this earlier in the week indoors, and I forgot that you could fly it with it was SLT, that you could fly it with the Anylink. So I tried to fly it indoors with its own transmitter, which I found pretty unpleasant. It was somewhat tail heavy and not a pleasant transmitter. I didn't turn it fast enough in the cramped space at the community centre, and I flew it into the plexiglass at the side of the community centre, and sure enough, the prop shaft broke. That I knew was very likely to happen at some point, since virtually everybody who's ever had one of these seems to have broken at least one, if not several, prop shafts. But I hadn't taken the precaution of ordering additional prop shafts. I don't give you any, and I hadn't taken the precaution of ordering them when I bought it. And when I went to try and order them now, I found you can't anymore. Nobody has them in stock, and everybody was listing them as either as out of stock, and several websites were listing them as discontinued. So apparently you just can't buy new prop shafts for this anymore, which is, given that the prop shafts break every time you breathe on them, a bit of a restriction. So it leaves people who bought the blithering thing, well, they've just got to improvise, right? Otherwise you're out of luck. Now, there's a number of ways of improvising. What I improvised with was one of these, an RCFunLab prop saver kit. What you get, see, there's that little tiny plastic piece in there. It's the same idea as your metal prop savers that you screw onto a prop shaft, and you have those half-inch or so O-rings, except look at the size of the O-rings, and these have these tiny O-rings and this tiny thing in this prop. And what you do is you put that little tiny plastic thing on the shaft, and I had enough of you can see there, I still had quite a bit of the original shaft left. It broke off right behind the propeller. So I put one of those little prop saver things on there and attached this prop to that, which is trying to see what the prop is, 5x3, apparently. That's a 5x3 prop. That's the props that came with this prop saver. I'm hoping that'll fly it okay. I haven't flown it with that yet. Other solutions for fixing it when the prop shaft breaks and you can't get a new prop shaft or whatever. There's a video which had a lot of views on YouTube where one guy replaced the whole motor and gearbox with a motor and gearbox out of a Syma X5 drone. He didn't actually show how he did it, he just showed the final result, but he did show what the motor and gearbox and the drone looked like, and I could see how that could work. You get at the inside here that you just cut through actually it's at the bottom, you cut through this tape here and tape there, and you just cut through the tape and the bottom comes off. The bottom piece here, that piece comes off. You can see I've just got a piece of tape there, and then you can get in the motor that's in there now, the motor and gearbox that are in now are just glued in with a bit of like rubber cement or whatever. So you take that out and you glue in the Stinson one, and resolder the wires, or the same wires or whatever. That's one solution, and that would probably give it a bit more power. Another solution that Don in our club was suggesting to me is that you can use the prop shaft out of a Horizon Sport Cub S. However, it requires a bit of jiggering because the Horizon Sport Cub S shaft, I've actually got one, but a spare shaft for the Horizon Sport Cub S, but it's thicker than this, so it won't go through there are little bronze bushings that go on either end where this shaft goes into the gearbox, and in the Horizon shaft won't go through those bronze bushings because it's too fat. So you kind of have to use it. He said you can actually use the bushings that are meant for the Sport Cub, but then you've got to have spare bushings. Well, I've got a spare shaft for the Sport Cub, but I don't have spare bushings. I don't know how you get spare bushings. Maybe you'd have to buy a whole spare gearbox for the Sport Cub, I'm not sure. Anyway, so that's a couple of possible ways of fixing it. I'm going to see if this way fixes. This is on a prop saver, so hopefully if we hit it now it'll come off, and I'm going to fly it. I'm going to fly it with the AnyLink now and the DX9, which I think is a much more reliable way of flying it than with the horrible little transmitter that comes with it. So we will see. But I wanted to try it outdoors where I got a bit more blithering room rather than indoors again at the... I may fly it indoors again at the community centre, but I wanted to do this first. Yep, I'm bound to the AnyLink now. So, I don't know. Will this fly? Oh, the other thing, as you can see, I put a couple of pieces of lead tape on the nose while I was fixing the propeller, because I found the thing somewhat tail heavy as well. Now, I may have made it nose heavy now. Just looking where it balances. It's not bad, eh? I'd say it's ahead of where they've got the marks, though, so it may be a bit nose heavy now. Just looking at my trims. Alright, well, let's see if this flies. Unfortunately, I've got to take it off the table because there's no way it's going to take off the ground. Well, it flies like a small plane, like in a fairly scale manner. Famous last words. Come back here. Helps if you can see the thing, of course. There's no mist this morning, but it's kind of overcast, so it's not so much light. Obviously, of course, you've got vastly more room here than you got in the community centre, so you don't have to be so. With the community centre, you've got to get the thing under control and turn it darn quickly, because you've only got like the width of this runway to work in. I was trying to fly the little mini train star there, and I couldn't fly that there at the community centre at all, because his turning circle, and it's not that he's a difficult plane to control, that mini train star, it's just that his turning, he doesn't have a tight turning circle, his turning circle was greater than the width of this runway. And since the width of the arena we fly in is only about that, you just couldn't turn him within the width of it. It was almost impossible. I mean, maybe if you kind of punched his throttle and leaned him over and turned him on the elevators, but it was almost impossible to turn him. Not this guy, I'm not talking about this. So the problem with this guy wasn't so much the turning circle. Well, partially it was hard to turn, but the problem with this guy was more that he was tail heavy and that transmitter's nasty. So I was having trouble keeping him under control. I don't think he's really nose heavy now. I've got, his center of gravity is way ahead of where they've got the marks on the wing, but he might be a hair nose heavy now. Oh, and I didn't even notice the difference in power, really. I mean, he seems to have about the same amount of power.
Time remaining, 4 minutes.
That he had with his original prop. It's the original motor. I haven't changed the motor. Haven't even changed the shaft because I couldn't get a spare shaft. I've just stuck that prop shaver on the end of the old shaft. It broke off right. They had, I think part of the reason it was broke off so readily was because they had it stuck out so far. It wasn't embedded in the propeller very far, and a lot of it stuck out of the plane. So you hit anything in the front and it tended, the propeller flexed, and there was no flex in that shaft. That shaft just snapped rather than bending. So it just snapped off right behind the propeller. And the old propeller's no real use either, because it's got a piece of shaft embedded in it, and I don't see how you get it out. I can't say this is flying all that pleasantly. There's a little bit of wind getting up, I think, now, but I mean, it's certainly flying. That was a horrible attempt to loop. It went over, but it didn't go up much. It may have less power with this propeller than it had with the original one. Doesn't seem to have a lot of power. I do have a 220 milliamp hour battery in it, which it's not much better. I think it looped better. I really think it looped, from what I remember, it looped better with the original prop. The pitch of this prop may be less. It flies okay with this prop, but it seems to have a little bit less punch with this prop than it had with the original prop. And the reason I was mentioning the battery was chiefly because the battery is probably a hair heavier than the battery it was meant to fly with as well, so it's carrying a teeny bit more weight. Between that and the lead tape. It's got a 220 milliamp hour battery instead of, I think it came with like 150 or something. And then I put a couple of pieces of lead tape on the front. There is definitely a hair of wind. Not much, but for something this small, you can...
2 minutes.
It's not going to land on the grass. I mean, I've got to land it on the grass, but it's going to tip over because those wheels are hopeless on grass. They're like little tiny wheels with pants. There's no way they're going to run on grass, so he's going to tip over. So all I can do is try and drop him on the grass as slowly as possible and hope we don't break anything. Which I suppose it's about time we should do. Yeah, I think he's got a bit less punch with this propeller, and I'm thinking it's probably because of the lesser pitch. And, you know, the extra weight may be making a difference. So, because he definitely, I remember he looped better with the other propeller. Okay, well, let's try and bring him in. There's wind in as much as there is wind. I think it's mainly from behind me, it seems. He doesn't glide worth a damn either, which is another problem. It would be nice if he glided better. Yeah, that wasn't too bad. And if he'd been able to run on his wheels, that would have been a decent landing. That would have been an okay landing if he could run on his wheels, but of course he can't, so as soon as he hit the ground, he tipped over. Just checking that Well, there you go. He flies again. I might try him again at the community centre now that I've given him a try with that arrangement with a prop saver. I just pushed that prop saver on. I thought if I had to drill the hole out a little bit actually. I think they just start with a very small hole with the idea you can, if you need to make it a little bit bigger, you can. So I drilled the hole out a bit to get the shaft in and pushed the shaft in as far as I could, and it's a pretty tight fit. I thought of putting a bit of cyanacrylate on it, but then I decided not to since it seemed to be an okay fit anyway. I don't think it was going to turn or pull off, so there you go. The Dromida Voyager repaired with one of these RCFunLab prop savers. But honestly, based on my experience with this plane, I don't think I'd ever buy anything from Dromida again. Poor parts that break, and then no supply chain to replace them, no real follow-up to show loyalty with your customers and keep them going, so people are left floundering to patch the thing together themselves to keep it going. That's not the kind of company I want to deal with, so I don't think I'd buy anything from them again. But we got it flying, and the basic air, it's just a little 3-channel thing. I mean, the basic airframe seems to work okay. I might, if I end up breaking the front again, I'll maybe try that other trick of putting a Syma gearbox in there, a Syma X5 gearbox in there. We'll try and keep him flying as long as we can. And it's nice at least that he's SLT, so I can fly him with the DX9 with the AnyLink. I've got the AnyLink there on the back of the DX9, and that gives me a way to fly these SLT things, which I much prefer. He's definitely much nicer to flying him with the DX9 than trying to fly him with a transmitter that came with him.